Welcome to a special edition of the Telltales podcast, Cashflow Pick'em. In this episode, we'll go through the memo and pick which company we believe will grow their cash flow the most on a percentage basis. I'm Mike Nicoletti. Every week, along with my co-hosts Jason Wallace and Hunt Lawrence, we bring you the Cash Flow Memo. Get it at telltales.us. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to dive deep into energy, technology, and healthcare. So download the memo now and get started.
The following conversation is intended for informational purposes only. You should always do your own work to determine if an investment is suitable for you.
I always ask if Jason's there.
I'm here today.
Good. Excellent. We want to get through all the cash flow predictions. So I think we're going to try to do exit CBNA as quickly as possible. On C, oil is really firmed quite a lot by $34 a barrel WTI. And it has to do with the possibility of U.S. military action in Iran once all the ships are in place, the two aircraft carriers and destroyers and support us. No idea whether that's going to happen, but that's certainly stiffened the market up. Supply demand, no change. I think if you're doing 26 again, once things settle down, I think the volume from Iran will be down. I think the volume from the U.S. is $60 oil is about right, almost 500,000 barrels. Saudi Arabia up to 10.5, I think that's about right. In terms of extra surplus capacity, that number at the top there is 2.5 million barrels. 1.5 million, at least of that, is Saudi Arabia. And generally, when Saudi Arabia gets to something like 10.5, or they think their capacity is 12, they generally don't like to use that extra 1.5 because they view themselves as being in a position to push in any supply disruptions from other places. They would rather see a more modulated oil price where you take off the peaks and take off the bottoms. So we are off these numbers, these demand numbers and supply numbers. We're getting to a point where $60 oil is getting supply and demand in better balance. Exhibit B, which is gas pricing, rebounded a lot last week. I mean, the weather, you'll see headlines, news headlines, where gas is trading in Boston for like $100 an MMBTU. And that's true. So those are those spot prices on the margin. And when it gets this cold, there just isn't enough gas. And so the spot prices get very, very high. And not just at Boston, they'll get very, very high at the delivery points in Marcellus. And the weather just isn't going to give up. The cold weather's all over the country. So this will definitely, I think, pretty well secure those $4 prices in 26 and 27. Exhibit A, no real comment on Exhibit A, except that they have finished all the spending bills. The House went on recess, so the Senate has to pass the bills that got through the House that were pretty carefully negotiated with the Senate committees. So I think rather than have another period of trying to shut down parts of the government, I assume the senators will gain 60 votes for those spending bills. And this is the way the process is supposed to work. Now, the fiscal year started October 1. Theoretically, these things should have been passed in August, but they weren't. But I think it was last year and finally got done in March or April. So here, if we get done at the end of January, we're beating last year by a couple of months. Hopefully the coming year, maybe we can get it done in December. I think without the shutdown over, healthcare subsidies, I frankly think the bills might have got done before the Christmas recess. So I think we're making progress in terms of doing our budgeting for the different departments of the government, activities of the government in a more rational way. But let's take 5 minutes because I know there are listeners to our podcast who are energy people. Why don't we take a few minutes? I'll try to do a minute a page on the 4 energy pages, pitching where I think someone's going to make more progress in terms of free cash flow. And on page 9, which is Exxon, Chevron, Conoco, Oxy, and Cheniere, I'm going to pick Cheniere because I think that they have brought all the capacity that they're planning to build on in LNG. And while it is a bit concerning that there's too much LNG capacity from the U.S. and also from Qatar, I think Cheniere is pretty well situated. On page 10, which is Kinder Morgan Enterprise Energy Transfer, Western, and ONEOK, I think the best position almost all the time is Enterprise. They're just more integrated and just most of the time do better than the others. On the upstream oil, EOG, Magnolia, Permian Resources, Diamondback, and Matador, it is a tough year because oil is down $10 or $12. Gas is made up for some of it, but the best balanced, most disciplined company, I think, is the best able to deal with the lower oil price, and that would be EOG. On the gas page, Antero Resources, EQT, Expand, and Antero Midstream. Antero Midstream is really a different business. It should probably be more on the Kinder Morgan page. But between those three, I find it difficult to pick between Antero, EQT, and Expand. I think they're all pretty well positioned and well managed. We helped set up Antero in the beginning, so I think I would pick Antero. With that, how are we doing, Jason? If you had to summarize how we did on the first several pages, how do you rate us as predictors? Are we about average? Are we doing better than average? Or how are we doing?
I hope we're doing slightly above average. I don't. What's it say?
Hold on, I don't want to give away where we are at the end. I have 5. Jason has 2. Grok has 3. Perplexity, 3. So I've got an early lead.
I've got page 13, which is JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and Interactive Brokers. Possible exception of Interactive Brokers there. I think there is organic growth, but the others are pretty dependent on buying in stock. But over to you, Mike and Jason.
Yeah. So last year on this page, the winner was Morgan Stanley, which none of us picked, including the AI bots. They had a change in free cash flow of 53%, so pretty significant. This year, I'm sticking with my pick of Interactive Brokers.
And I made the same pick, and might as well give all of the AI picks because they're all the same. So Grok, Perplexity, Gemini, ChatGPT, and another contender that we added to the list is Claudebot, or also known as Moltbot. We can talk about that probably after this, but there's another just to give us something to gauge our performance against. But everyone picked Interactive Brokers.
I'll go with Goldman Sachs.
All right.
Nice.
How about the next page? Cat Gear, Generac, Transdime, and Fastenal.
Last year, Generac was the winner in growth and free cash flow. Hunt, I believe, picked Generac. Yep. I picked Fastenal last year. This year, I'm going to select Transdime, banking on the recovery in aircraft production.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Generac.
I'm going to go with Caterpillar this year. The thing about Caterpillar is they're dependent on construction markets. They're just pointing money on building turbines for off-grid power.
And then on the AI front, 3 of the 5 chose Generac, and 2 of the 5 chose TransDigm.
Now we get into healthcare with Pfizer, Moderna, LNTH, Biotech, and Vertex, where Mike and I just expect to lose this page to Jason.
Last year, the winner on this page was Pfizer. Pfizer surprisingly had the largest growth in free cash flow, probably because they had such a fall off from post-COVID, the COVID vaccines the year prior. So this year, my pick this year is Lantheus. Lantheus had kind of a poor year last year, a little bit of management issues, but going into this year, they have a new formula for their primary diagnostic for prostate cancer, and then they're also seeing a lot of growth from diagnostics for imaging the brain for Alzheimer's.
And my pick is Vertex, which again is one that you all know we've been following pretty closely. On the AI front, there are 2 votes for Vertex, 2 for Lantheus, and 1 for Moderna.
I'm going to pick Biotech because I like the idea that the founders like to work in Germany. Somehow I think if I keep picking Biotech, some year I'll win.
That very well could be the case. Certainly they have a good prospect for 2 years out.
Yeah. Next page was McDonald's, Starbucks, Chipotle, Celsius, and worldwide.
Right. And the winner who Hunt selected was Starbucks with the largest growth, seeing a rebound in sales from the new CEO taking over. This year, my pick is Celsius, I believe, along with Mike's there.
Yeah, same as last year.
Yeah, same as last year. Celsius had weaker growth last year. Some of it was due to their own steps and some out of their control. But Celsius' core product has reaccelerated growth this year, as well as Alani Nu, which is a product they purchased that's seeing pretty explosive growth this year.
And on the AI front, is this one unanimous? It is.
Everyone's picking Celsius?
Yes.
I'm going to go with Chipotle. Chipotle is lost their CEO to Starbucks, right?
Correct.
And they suffered a bit. It's a great long-term performer. I just think that it's just a quality. I actually don't like the Chipotle food, but I think it's pretty good product, pretty well positioned, and hopefully his successor or successors can get the magic going again for Chipotle.
On the next page, we have logistics companies, FedEx, UPS, along with Nike, Costco, and Lennar. The last year's winner was FedEx, who I picked. Let's see. Hunt picked UPS, Mike picked Nike. Most of them were pretty flat. FedEx had free cash flow growth of 40%, where I'm sticking with that pick this year. I have an outside theory that FedEx will start taking over some of the U.S. Postal Service services, so sticking with that.
I chose Lennar, and I have no AI agents with me. 2 of the agents took Costco, and 1 took Nike.
I'm going to go with Mike. I'm going to go with Lennar. Lennar wasn't here last year.
Right. Correct.
But I think it's a real priority for the Trump administration to try to get more home building underway. They're talking about authorizing or putting in legislation or executive orders or regulation to allow people to pull down payments from their 401ks. Mortgage rates will be somewhat lower. I think we've been way underproducing the number of houses that we need, given the demographics. At some point, I think Lennar and being one of the leading home building companies will really have some very strong results.
The next page should be pretty interesting. It's Freeport, Albemarle, CF Industries, and NextEra. Last year, the winner was NextEra Energy, who Hunt picked. This year, I'm going to pick Albemarle. But yeah, it should be interesting with the commodity prices and changing prices recently.
And Albemarle was negative last year and the year before.
Right.
So that's
but in EV sales were
yes. Right. There should be a bounce back there. And then there's also incentive to buy more of it from non-Chinese suppliers. So.
Correct.
Huge bounce back in lithium prices is reflected in the Albemarle stock price. And of course, very high copper prices reflected in the Freeport price. And fertilizer, I don't think the farm economy is doing too well with that limited exports to China. I feel more comfortable with lithium snapback than I just don't know. I can't make up my mind between Freeport and Albemarle. I guess Albemarle comes before A comes before F in the alphabet, so I'll go with Albemarle.
Perfect. Well, I picked Freeport, so
yeah, there you go.
And the AIs are pretty aligned. So two of them, Grok and Gemini, chose Freeport, and Perplexity and ChatGPT chose Albemarle. The Moltbot chose NextEra, which I think I have a suspicion as I know why.
Yeah. Now we come to another Jason page. I'm going to predict in advance that Jason will not pick United Healthcare for CVS.
Well, since they already reported their earnings, I'm not sure if too many people would pick them at this point. But and then the announcement that the White House plans to put forward a proposal that Medicare spending does not increase from last year to this year. So United Health Group, CVS, Regeneron, and Eli Lilly are on this page. Last year, the winner was Eli Lilly, largely driven with their weight loss drugs. I think we all picked that last year, and that's my pick again this year. And along the same lines, they have I think the weight loss drug that's going to take the market, being a small molecule pill, as well as they have the leading Alzheimer's treatment now. I think it has. Leqembi was the first one to market, and I think Lilly's is now taking 90% of market share.
Yeah. First healthcare stock to get to $1 trillion market value for the equities.
Right.
Very impressive performance. Hard to not pick Lilly.
Yeah, I'm going to roll my vote for Lilly. Jason too.
Yeah.
Hunt's on that. We've got three of the, yeah. ChatGPT picked CVS. I don't understand that one, frankly.
Yeah.
Good luck. Page 20, we have Uber, DoorDash, Airbnb, Five Below, Harrow Health. Last year, the winner was Harrow. They grew off a base of very small cash flow. That's my pick again this year. They're, again, as we've said, they're early stages of commercializing a handful of drugs. So, and it looks like it's going well.
Same here. And three of the AIs are on that page as well. Perplexity, Gemini, and ChatGPT.
All for Harrow?
All for Harrow.
I have to pick something else. This probably won't work out at all, but the self-driving cabs, robotaxis, whatever we call them, been so slow to roll out. Think whether it's Waymo or Tesla, I think everyone, including investors, are underestimating the head start that Uber has. And so I think since everyone's picking Harrow, I think I'll pick Uber to have a successful year and increase their free cash flow.
Perfect. So along with that, there's two more AI votes. There's Grok is choosing Five Below, and the Moltbot chooses Airbnb.
Yeah, I kind of like the Uber pick.
Yeah. Pretty competent CEO at Uber, too. You know, Uber is much better now than it was 5 years ago, mostly because it's importing him as a CEO.
Should we review our totals?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I like this because I won.
Yeah.
I had 6. Jason had 5. Now, I should point out, in the second half of this, I only got 1. So in the first half, which I count as including the energy companies, I had 5. So the second half of the pages I'm really struggling on. Jason caught up a lot in the second half. And Hunt, as a percentage of the ones that you participated in, I think you have the highest batting average. So then let's look at, we had 2 AI agents last year, just Grok and Perplexity. Grok got 5 correct and Perplexity got 4 correct.
We still have 7 or 8 minutes to cover the early pages. Have we missed anything on healthcare, Jason, that happened in the last week before we hit page 1?
Yeah, so in the appropriations bill that was passed that governs health and human services, there was some PBM reform in there where they're no longer going to be able to tie Medicare Part D pricing to the list price of drugs. Kind of removes the incentive to drive up the list price of drugs that the PBMs do and then game the system with the rebates. But it doesn't completely solve the problem because it doesn't touch the commercial side of healthcare, or the insurance at least. And another provision in that same bill explicitly prevents PBMs from accepting drug rebates. It's a good thing, it's a good step, but the PBMs are already discovered the workaround for this. So all 3 of the big PBMs now have associated group purchasing organizations, so GPOs. They effectively buy the drug, force the pharmaceutical manufacturer to provide that rebate, and then the PBM is simply brokering the transaction from the purchasing organization to the pharmacy. So they've almost figured out a way they have added another middleman, and I think they've figured out a way to add more middleman fees into the process. So trying to fix the problem kind of created another problem and added to the expense. So I think the only real ultimate solution is you have to break these up and prevent an insurer from purchasing the drugs and from owning the pharmacy. And those need to be 3 independent verticals. But they're trying.
Yeah, I mean, the overall Trump administration is getting criticized for wanting to acquire Greenland and for being just completely in a chaotic mode on ICE raids in Minnesota and elsewhere. But they are doing good work in healthcare. RFK Jr. gets a lot of criticism for his stances on vaccines and whatnot. But when you consider what they've done from a regulatory point of view, and as Jason says, also from a legislative point of view, they are doing more to try to rationalize healthcare like all the other administrations that come before. I think is that overstating the case, Mike and Jason?
No, that's our view exactly. I mean, it's one of those things where when everybody immediately repulses against change and claims pretty outlandish things about RFK Jr. and tries to pin him as an anti-vaxxer and all this stuff, you wonder if there's a source behind it that's not deeper than what's being talked about in the media. And if you look at the things that he's actually implemented and the people that he's hired, some of them have not really been very good, and some of them were pulled out of their roles relatively quickly. But specifically, Marty McCary, his role and what he's done there has been really, really impressive. So I think if you focus on the actions and ignore the rhetoric, you actually see that some really good progress is being made there.
Yeah, and what I tell friends when I'm discussing this topic is that some of the things you're upset about are a lot of the reversible things. So when RFK Jr. and Trump's not in the White House and these people are all gone, those decisions can be wound back. But the changes being put into how the FDA regulates the food supply and more normalizing with the rest of the world, those changes are likely to be permanent. No one's going to fight to add petrochemical food dyes back into our food system. So,
or flip the food pyramid back around, right? I mean, kind of simple stuff like that had become so institutionalized, even though it was so clearly clinically wrong. And it took somebody willing to piss everyone off in order to actually make those changes. And, you can dislike him and you may not like some of his stances, but you have to look at this as being huge advances for the actual American healthcare consumer.
Right. The last couple of interviews I've seen, Dr. Oz, who's in charge of Medicare and Medicaid, just outstanding. I mean, if the presidency turns over in 28 and the new president, Democrat, doesn't try to talk him into continuing to run Medicare and Medicaid, I'd be horrified. I think he is making more progress and has more clear thinking about that part of our healthcare system that we've seen before. Can we focus in terms of recent news on the early pages? We focus in on page 3 because ASML had huge increase in bookings, and it's not exactly clear if they said it was more Korea and the U.S., presumably China for the less able equipment. But Jason and Mike, what kind of a signal is this that the stock's up a lot, the bookings are up a lot? I mean, when people say data centers for AI, it's a bubble and whatnot, how do you explain orders for this equipment coming up in such a significant way?
Yeah, the companies making the chips are not saying it's a bubble. So from all their indications, the demand's still there for chips going out 3-4 years from now. So their Capex budgets, TSMC is going to spend more money than Intel makes on this coming year or this past year.
And that amount is still not enough to satisfy the demand for wafers.
And then you have Intel trying to catch up. So they're going to spend a bunch of money on fabs. So,
and this is how you know. So Taiwan Semiconductor is a monopolist, no question, textbook case of a monopoly. But the demand supply equation has gotten so far out of whack that you now have Tesla partnering with Samsung to try to help them get up to the leading edge. You have NVIDIA just announced a deal to have Intel produce some of their networking chips. So there is active support to go around Taiwan Semiconductor, even though, NVIDIA is the number one customer of Taiwan Semiconductor.
They can't satisfy their demand.
So by carving off a chip that they can build from the ground up on Intel processes, they can actually help themselves out in the future, and that Intel might be able to be competitive with Taiwan Semiconductor in the future. It would be a stretch if that were the case, and it's going to take many years to get there. But that is where the industry is today.
Yeah, and presumably it helps TSMC produce more chips that they can only make for NVIDIA's computation.
Mm-hmm.
And next week, we're going to think China is something we have to treat with. And of course, Taiwan Semiconductor, the risk there is some type of activity where China or Beijing, the central government's in control of Taiwan, is kind of becoming an attraction for next week. I personally think that a military action between China and U.S. over Taiwan is extremely unlikely. And in the intervening period, because I think it may take us 2 weeks to start on page 1 and then go to page 20, then go to page 2, then go to page 18 and go through all 80 companies and say, where is there an impact of China and China policies, considering it's the second largest economy in the world? Anyone, I know Mike, Jason, and I have all read Apple in China, and anyone who hasn't read it during this 2-week period when we're going to be talking about this, I think it's a terrific way to learn more about the subject we're going to be talking about. The book doesn't really come to the conclusion that Apple exists only because of China's regulation. But the early part of the book is pretty much about Terry Gillen, who founded Foxconn, bought it from a very small company to a very large company making equipment, mostly iPhones, for Apple in China, and basically got to a position here as a Taiwan businessman, self-made, who's the largest employer in China, who has more square footage of factory under roof than anyone in the world. And it just seems to me that what's more likely to happen here is some kind of collaboration between the business sector in Taiwan and the Communist Party in Beijing. I know Mike and Jason aren't completely or probably have different views on this. I think one of the ways to kind of discuss this issue is focus on all 80 companies. Some of them, China won't be that much of an impact, but a lot of them, Taiwan is a huge impact. Apple, it's a huge impact. So I think that's a good thing to do over the next 2 Wednesdays.
Can I plug one other reading piece?
Yes, absolutely.
Jason, I just sent out our quarterly letter, and it's available. If you didn't get it, then you can email us directly and we'll send it to you. But in the partnership letter, we discuss trade policy and the things this administration's doing and a different way to look at these situations. So I'd recommend read that alongside your Apple in China.
Absolutely. Now we're over. We're definitely over. So everyone be well and stay healthy, and we'll be back exactly 7 days from now. Take care, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
The views expressed on this podcast are the host alone and do not constitute an offer to sell or a recommendation to purchase or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security nor a recommendation for any investment product or service. While certain information contained herein has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, neither the host nor any of their employers or their affiliates have independently verified this information, and its accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Accordingly, no representation or warranty, expressed or implied, is made as to, and no reliance should be placed on, the fairness, accuracy, timeliness, or completeness of this information. The hosts and all employers and their affiliated persons assume no liability for this information and no obligation to update the information or analysis contained herein in the future, and may or may not hold positions in the securities mentioned.